All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and I am back from Kiowa Island. 5 rounds of golf and a good time, and back to discuss the happenings from this past week's Survivor Pool contest. And again, this is the kind of the recap show. The main show tomorrow is when we're going to move on and talk about week 3. But the boys wanted me to always on Tuesdays just kind of review kind of what we did this past week, what we talked about, and things that happened this past weekend, and always testing our process and things like that. So again, you are looking, what you're looking at right now actually is the tool, but it still has week 2's data on the top left. The win percentages, the pick percentage, the projections or whatever, and the EV that we calculated for week 2. Week 3, that is going to probably refresh. It could be within the next hour or so. It depends when Evan kind of gets to it. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So for those of you that are playing Survivor for the first time, or even if you haven't, have quite a bit of excitement pretty much every week. If you're getting involved in this, like stuff like last week, I mean, that's what this is all about, man. NFL is so brutal with respect to how one touchdown and one bit of variance just trolls everything. And for all of you that were sweating like all those games yesterday with Survivor and stuff like that, this is what you're gonna get, man. It's also one of the reasons why it's usually a really good idea to play super aggressively in these tournaments, in these contests, because in a weird way, the longer you go before you get knocked out, like the more it hurts at the end. So you're better off taking these calculated risks early than kind of surviving, and then getting what almost happened in Dallas and Arizona happened to you in week 11 and week 12, so all good. So what we talked about last week, and we're going to be talking about this all the time, is the importance of differentiating between pools. With all these splash pools out there, and between that and your home pools and Circa or whatever, every pool has different rules, and some picks look really, very feasible for single pick pools, and some picks look, terrible for single pick pools, but good for double pick pools and things like that. Oh, before I get into it, I posted this in the Discord, but this is a PSA. One of the things that happened because I was in Kiowa Island, I only play like 1 or 2 contests on DraftKings as far as Survivor goes, but DraftKings regards Survivor pools as sports betting. So what that means is that if you're in a jurisdiction at any point, you're in a jurisdiction where sports betting is not legal, you are not allowed to enter picks from there. So I was I was in South Carolina when I had to enter my picks, and I was out of luck. And I never knew that. I thought that it was like DFS, where if you pre-enter the contest, you can just make your picks later. It doesn't work that way. So if you are in these DraftKings contests now, you do not leave the country. Do not leave into a jurisdiction without putting something in for that week first. So I ended up just losing two contests because of that. But you know what? My own fault for not reading the fine print. So anyway, last week we did talk about Baltimore being a totally reasonable pick in single pick pools, just because the EV of 1.16, I mean, it's a lot, and even though only if all your entries weren't worth that much anyway, because everybody was alive, even though it's 1.16 times, say, $1,000 is not that big of a deal. Um, um, it was so much higher the next one that for single pick pools, it wasn't that bad of a play. So I didn't mind doing that for the single pick pools. But as you see, and we'll talk about more of this tomorrow, but their viability in doubles is so big that there was no reason to play them in anything where you had double picks coming up in 11. The three main picks of the week, all right, the clearly the main one was Dallas. That was, I thought was clearly the best play in all formats. And even though, again, the EV was so low, we felt as though it was worth the trade-off for all the future strength that something like that would provide. And for those of you that obviously didn't see, that was, as wildly random and variant as a game can get. Back and forth, that ESPN thing was going like this, just freaking crazy. And we think we all saw what happened. Dallas had it locked up. Then Russell Wilson threw basically a Hail Mary with 40 seconds to go. And then Dallas gets the ball to the 47-yard line of the Giants, which is what was in range for a 65-yard field goal, which until recently was basically would have been the record. But Dallas has this insane weapon where they didn't care. As a matter of fact, on the play before, where most people with 8 seconds to go will try to get another 10 yards and get out of bounds, they literally just kind of like circle, move the ball into the center of the field and set it up for him, knowing that he would drain it from 64 yards. And then in overtime, Dallas had a decent chance to win, like if you include ties, but in most pools, ties wouldn't have helped. So basically, Dallas had maybe like a 4% chance at one point, even in overtime, of actually winning the game. But Russell Wilson's luck finally ran out. Through one of those Hail Marys turned into a pick, an interception, followed by Mr. Automatic field goal. So Dallas advanced. Second key pick of the week was Arizona, and Arizona looked like they had it completely in the bag. And even then, kind of gave people a little sweat after I was on the plane, thank God. I didn't have a chance to see that stress. But again, their EV was pretty good. Their future value considerations were not as sharp as Dallas, but we thought it was kind of enough to make them close. So they advanced. The third pick I liked a lot was Minnesota. I thought it was worth taking the risk. Because of their lack of future value, and they completely laid an egg last night. And then there were some aggressive plays that I recommended for double pick pools, and I did play them myself. I did play the Saints. I really did. I had enough entries where I thought it was worth taking a couple of shots on the Saints, even though they were an underdog in San Francisco, and that didn't work out. But if it did, those entries would be freaking razor sharp, but that was it. We did not play a shred of Buffalo, as I mentioned. We did not play a shred of Detroit. Both teams won rather handily, actually. But again, when all the teams win, it's not really about what equity was picked up, because everybody picked up the same equity. What happens is you have to see how your entry may have strengthened. So if you played Baltimore, if you played Buffalo, your entry did nothing. As a matter of fact, it lost, because when you play a team like Baltimore or Buffalo last week, those picks only gain when other teams get knocked out, and just basically nobody got knocked out. So that all those entries did was lose value, because now you won't get to use them in the future. One team that I actually did consider that I didn't play that ended up losing last night was Houston, but we'll get into that some other time. So I want to, again, take a look at what you're trying to accomplish here and really what happened this past week, right? So let's take a look at, for example, Dallas in this pool, okay? Just for fun, let me reset this. Let me see if he updated this yet. Let me just see. I don't think so. Yes, look at this. Check this out. Live while it happened. It was all the week 3 stuff just updated, literally as we're recording it. So you could actually right now calculate the EV for week 3. But again, I would want to just give another look at these ownership projections here. Now these look actually, well, sort of reasonable. We'll get to Seattle. We'll get to all this tomorrow, I think. Yeah, so for those of you that are here, you can at this point calculate for EV for week 3 and at least get a look-see at it, literally as we were recording, which is great. So again, just to review, like what actually happens with this Dallas win. What a Dallas win does for us, okay? It's kind of hard to explain. It just gets them off the board, right? It just removes them. So we don't have to worry about playing them again, okay, ever. Remember, like, especially in double pick pools, if you're in doubles in week 11 to 18, that's 11 times 8 it's 8 times 2 is 16, plus that's 26 teams. You got to use 26 teams. So anytime you could just get a team out, a win and then gone, that's great news. And if you look into the future here, you see what happened. We got rid of Dallas, and you know what? They're long gone. We're never going to play them again anyway. So that was, even though we gave up a little EV to get to that, take that risk, completely paid off. Again, it's hard to say, you know what I mean? It's hard to see, but you've done this enough times, and you follow these concepts. You can understand how strong an entry like this becomes when it gets off the board. Because what you want to do is stockpile these teams like Baltimore, Buffalo, whatever, so that when you get that $1.15 EV spot again, maybe it's week 13 when your entry is worth 20,000 as opposed to 1,000. So very, very good what happened with Dallas. Arizona, they got off the board, and not to give it a hint, but there's really only one spot to use them in the future. And if, we're fortunate enough to get there, we'll probably use them. But it was good enough to get Arizona out. Remember when we talked about last week, the only team there were 2 teams I played that just had completely no future value. One was Dallas, which we talked about, and the other was actually this was the Saints. But every other one had a little bit of push and pull. Like Arizona had this one spot in week 5 you had to kind of deal with. Minnesota even had this one spot actually in week 5, all right, against Cleveland that we considered playing them. So everything had a little bit of push and pull, but Dallas is the one that really just kind of like opened up the board, okay? So Arizona, nice. Let's see some of these other teams what ended up happening. So Baltimore won, but look at that. They got all this stuff in the future. Buffalo, look at all these Buffaloes. They're going to be minus 12 here, minus 12, minus 8, minus 7. You know what I mean? So I wish that we could have gotten one of those underdogs home, though. I actually played a couple of Vegases, too. They were not even competitive either. It's been remarkably chalky the last since the season started. But that's just the way it goes. Okay. What else can we talk about without getting too much into it? Okay, you know what? You want to talk about this week just a little bit? We'll talk about this week just a little bit with respect to, I don't know, just like kind of overall planning here. So when we do this every week, we're going to try to separate single pick pools from double pick pools. And what I love about the way we set this tool up, this kind of like green and red visual here, is you can kind of almost feel like which of these plays are going to be good. And then if you get used to kind of sorting these things by columns, you're going to start to learn how all this stuff works. Like I mentioned, like Buffalo, like you're going to see they're a 12-point favorite this week, but what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like they're the most likely team to win, but does that mean you're supposed to play them this week? Or is all of this future value enough where you want to save them? Okay. And as I mentioned last week and the week before, think about it in terms of DFS for a second. For those of you that play daily fantasy sports, what you're trying to do is find, players that project well that no one else is playing. And if you think about it conceptually, that's just kind of not possible, right? Because if teams are going to project very well, then people are going to play them. Okay, so it's kind of like this theoretical nirvana, right? Or more of a theoretical impossibility that if a team's going to project really, really well, people are going to play them. So if you have a team in Survivor that is extremely high win odds, and you're not going to have to use them in the future, you know what's going to happen? I mean, everybody's going to play them. You know what I mean? So their EV is going to be probably kind of low. So you're going to have to walk that tightrope between whether it's worth the low EV, okay, or the lower EV, whether that gets compensated for by the lack of future value, and that's what kind of makes this whole thing fun. Okay, the only time, and this is what we're planning on, there's one opportunity where you can find teams that have high win percentage and low future value, and very few people are playing them. And I guess I should probably almost ask that as a quiz, for those of you that have been here. If anyone wants to take a shot at the Discord, I've already talked about it like 5 different times, although maybe I haven't phrased it in quite that way. But again, so when is it possible to have a team with insanely high win percentage, with extraordinarily low ownership, and with low future value? So you can think about it, and I'll give you the answer. The only way that can happen is if that team is scarce. Okay, if there's a scarcity involved, like if, say, everybody burned Buffalo before, say, week 17 or something like that, and then in week 17 let's say you're the only one to have them available, and they are also going to be a huge favorite and low future value. Okay, so those are your dream spots in Survivor, is finding that opportunity to get the high win percentage with low ownership, with low future value. And you can get them, but you've got to set yourself up for that. Okay, you've got to do this nonsense early, where maybe you take some low EV spots, maybe you take some undue risk, so that hopefully in the future, down in week 13, 14, 15, you can drop that hammer on people with those kind of theoretical nirvana plays. Okay, and that's what people, I'm telling you. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen all the content. I see people talk about this, and this is what people miss. Okay, when people say, "Oh, it's a contest between future value and EV," it's all about EV. But the question is when are you going to be able to slam that EV to get the most money? It's going to be when the pools are worth more, and it's going to be when scarcity has made it so that you can play the highly projected teams at low ownership. Okay, so that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So like when people were like not getting on me, they're like, Dallas, the line is crashing, their EV is 0.9. Okay, you know what we did though? We actually cost ourselves money pre-flop by tossing in 10 cents of EV, but what we were paying for was the red, as I mentioned. You know what I mean? You're paying for this red, and more to the point, you're paying to have these Buffaloes and Baltimores and whatever available for these possible week 15, 16 hammers. Now, it's not always that easy. I mean, if a team is like that ahead of everybody else, maybe it's worth taking the shot. Like, for example, I'm just going to click this right away. Okay, so all right. So again, I didn't even double check these ownerships, but right now, let's just say that Buffalo was 110 EV. All right. It's a balancing act, right? Yes, you could play Buffalo right now and make yourself 1.10. Is it worth doing that to give up the chance to maybe play Buffalo at -1, at 1.10 later on in the season? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow a little bit. But it's always a balancing act. It depends on what else is available this week. Like if nothing else is good, like let's say all these teams, for example, Green Bay, all these teams have low EV and incredible future value, like that you can play them all, then maybe Buffalo's a good play. And maybe they're just the best play. But it's a constant balancing test between future value, EV now, and EV in the future. that's honestly pretty much all I want to get into today. And tomorrow, 4 o'clock, we're going to do this. And I listen, first of all, I want to say that you guys are really doing well in the Discord. Keep on with those observations and those questions. You know, it's more important for me, honestly, to make sure you guys are learning than it is for you guys to be winning, if that makes any sense. Um, so I'm looking at the Discord list. I can't be in there all the time. I'm very busy, but I do see the comments in there, and every once in a while I'll comment on them. And I see Werhan and a couple of other guys posting some stuff in there. And each time I see it, I feel a little bit happier that you guys are kind of picking up on stuff. And feel free to post some observations about. I see some people say, hey, you know, what do you think of Seattle this week? It looks like they have, you know, very few spots available to the next week. And the fact that you're even looking at it that way, it makes me happy. Now, is that the end of the story? No, but at least that's a start. And then as we learn how to balance these things, then you guys will all get better. And I promise you this, that the end of this journey, the end of this season, everybody that's been in here or will be in here will be following this. I swear to you, you will know more about how to play these pools than 99% of the people playing them. Okay, are you going to win? I don't know, but again, you're going to be put in a really, really good position. So that's pretty much all I have. I will see you guys tomorrow, and that will do it. Set the outro video. How about that? Let's see. Let's do.